This lightweight utility-style cruiser e-bike is the Carbon Joy from Urtopia. Now, this brand has been making a name for itself with some pretty innovative features. One of their e-bikes even has an integrated ChatGPT system. So what cool stuff comes along with this one? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, where we're known for detailed reviews based on data from our real-world performance tests. I'm John, and I'll be taking you through everything with the Carbon Joy today. But very quickly, please be sure you're subscribed to the channel so you can catch our new reviews and our weekly news and entertainment show. And please also consider using the affiliate link in the video description if this review helps you in your buying decision. We put a ton of time and effort into our content, and using that link allows us to keep doing what we do. But now let's carry on into the Carbon Joy. So to start off with a few highlights about this bike, one of its most prominent features is its lightweight and seamless carbon fiber frame. This bike weighs in at about 59 pounds, including its roughly 5-pound battery, which makes it one of the lightest bikes of this style that we've tested. Its low weight helps to be relatively easy to load onto a bike rack, and with small 20-inch wheels, it also helps give the bike a really agile and spirited feel. Another standout feature is the Carbon Joy's pedal assist system. The bike has a 500-watt rear hub motor paired with a super responsive torque sensor, as well as 4 distinct power levels with different feels. We'll talk about those more in our speed test section shortly, but most of the time it pedals a lot like an easier version of a non-electric bike, so in my experience it never felt overpowered or unsafe. As a last highlight, I think this bike stands out as being generally uncomplicated and easy to use. In addition to having really approachable power levels and being relatively portable, its user interface is straightforward, and its step-through frame has a standover height of about 16 inches, which makes it very easy to get on and off the bike. Before we get to our performance tests, let's run through the rest of the Carbon Joy specs. The motor I mentioned is powered by a fully integrated 529 watt-hour battery that's UL 2271 certified. The bike comes with an 8-speed Shimano Altus drivetrain with a 50-tooth chainring and a 12 to 32-tooth cassette. For brakes, there's a Tektro HD E3520 hydraulic disc brake system with 2 piston calipers and 180mm rotors. The 20-inch wheels have 3-inch wide K-Rad tires from Kenda with puncture protection and a cool checkerboard tread pattern. And then both wheels have full coverage alloy fenders. There's a cargo rack over the rear wheel that can carry up to 59.5 pounds, and that has an integrated taillight and brake light. Up front, there's a suspension fork with 50 millimeters of travel, and there's an adjustable stem with an integrated 30 lux headlight. Now, we tested a pre-production model with a couple of relatively minor differences from the final version of the bike. Ours came with a black saddle mounted to a dual telescoping seat post, but the production model will have a brown saddle. And then our bike had 730mm handlebars with a 15-degree back sweep, but those have been changed to a more cruiser-styled set of handlebars with 24 degrees of back sweep. Regardless, there's a cool color display mounted to the stem with an easily adjustable angle. The handlebars have brown faux leather ergonomic grips. The bike's control panel sits on the left handlebar, and we put our bell on that side. Then the right side has a thumb lever for the throttle and a below-the-bar trigger shifter for the drivetrain. To wrap things up, the bike itself is UL 2849 certified. It has a total payload capacity of 330 pounds. It ships as a Class 2 with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, but its pedal-assisted speed can be increased to make it a Class 3 through the bike's display. And it's available in 2 color options, including white and the blue that we have here. Do keep in mind that we're testing the bike before launch, so its price has yet to be finalized, but you can check that using the link in the video description. But with all that covered, let's jump into our test sections and see how this bike performed. First things first, let's talk about our brake test. As I mentioned, this bike has a Tektro hydraulic disc brake system that we tested by pedaling up to 20 miles per hour, applying the brakes, and then measuring the distance it took the bike to stop. My fellow reviewer Griffin does each test for consistency. He repeats the process 3 times to smooth out any variables, and then we take an average of the results that we can use for comparison. The Carbon Joy's average result was a very impressive 18 feet and 3 inches, making it one of the best performers of its style in this test. Other bikes we've tested in the utility category averaged 20 feet and 4 inches, so the Urtopia's stopping distance was just over 2 feet shorter than average. Now, weight is a really big factor here, and typically the heavier a bike is, the harder it is to slow down. The average weight for a utility bike at the time of filming is 74.8 pounds, making the Carbon Joy a little over 15 pounds lighter than average, so it makes sense that its stopping distance would also be shorter than average. In my personal testing of the bike, I thought the brakes felt great, with powerful but not too aggressive stopping force and overall good modulation. We give it a very emphatic 2 thumbs up in this test. Our speed test has the goal of seeing how fast a bike can be, but we go a bit deeper by looking at the programming of the pedal assist system and also test the throttle acceleration to make sure it matches the style of the bike. I recorded a few clips for this test out on our local bike paths, so let's go see how the Carbon Joy did, and we can analyze the results back here. All right, so we are here for a speed test on the Carbon Joy. Start things off here in class 2 mode, and I'm going without pedal assist, kind of between 10 and 10.5 miles per hour pretty consistently, at least according to the bike's display. The app is showing a little bit lower, but we will go off the bike. So let's go up to eco mode. All right, and super smooth power delivery, quite a bit of power in this setting, which feels nice, definitely makes pedaling a lot easier. And we're getting a pretty significant difference in speed here. So we're up to, let's see, between 14.5 miles per hour, something like that. And that's, with a pretty casual level of effort here, but that feels really good. So let's go up to tour mode. Okay, immediate boost in power and speed here. Feels super easy. Feels like I'm cruising without, breaking a sweat. The bike's definitely not having any trouble. We're up to 16.5 miles per hour, maybe a little higher at times. Again, trying to maintain a consistent level of effort. And then let's go up to boost mode. I'm gonna shift up here, I think all the way to 8th gear. Yeah, okay, so again, pretty consistent 2 mile per hour jump or so. How's it going? And let's see, we are, kind of around 19.5 with pretty light pedaling, maybe up above at times. A little bit of a downward grade there, so I'm not going to count that. But yeah, around 19.5, and then let's finish things off in turbo mode. Okay, and we are hitting and slightly exceeding the class 2 speed limit here, just I think with my pedaling added in. So yeah, okay, everything looks good there. I'm going to bump up the speed. We'll do a class 3 test and then check out the throttle. All right, we are back for a class 3 speed test on the Carbon Joy. Starting things off kind of in that same range in eco mode, between 14 and 14.5 miles per hour. At least that's what I'm shooting for the sake of consistency here. And, again, fairly relaxed level of effort. So speed bumped up there, but there's a slight downward grade, so we're not going to count that. But I think that initial reading was about right. So let's go ahead and go up to tour mode. All right, again, very smooth. Noticeable increase in power there. Very responsive feel. We're up to, I think, around the same increase here, around 17 miles per hour. 17.5, somewhere in that range. Okay, let's go up to boost mode. Now, the increases in power do feel pretty evenly distributed. Getting quite a increase here up to around 21 miles per hour in boost mode. So pedaling at this point, I'm applying very light pressure, very low level of effort, and that feels really good, very easy. Yeah, right around 21 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and go up to turbo mode and finish things off. Now, definitely lots of power output here. I am cooking, jumping up pretty far. We are up to between right around 26 miles per hour. maybe a little bit under. We did get up to about 27, but then it seemed to sort of fall back down and is holding tight. Yeah, I think right around 26, but all right, let's call that our pedal test. Let's go see what happens when we hit the throttle. All right, and the last thing that we're gonna do here is a throttle acceleration test from 0 to 20. Let's see how long that takes. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, nice gradual start there. And then we're starting to pick up. So 14, 15, 17, 19, and 19.9. Okay. Hey, we did hit 20. Okay. Now we'll bounce back to the studio. Going back to the pedal tests, let's quickly recap those results. I started off with no pedal assist at an average of about 10.3 miles per hour, and then in the class 2 test, my speeds were 14.1 miles per hour in eco mode, 16.6 in tour, 19.4 in boost, and 20.1 miles per hour in turbo. Things started off similarly in the class 3 test, and then got noticeably faster as I stepped up through the pedal assist settings. My speeds there were 14.4 miles per hour in eco, 17.2 in tour, 20.9 in boost mode, and then 25.7 miles per hour in turbo. Looking at the graphs of my results, there's a fairly similar pattern in both tests, showing consistent increases in speed and power. We find that this kind of well-balanced programming feels really intuitive and easy to use, so I'll give Urtopia some big kudos for that, but I've also got to mention another super cool thing that took me a bit more time on the bike to notice. We generally only reference torque or cadence sensors when discussing how a bike feels to ride, since most bikes typically rely primarily on one or the other, and each creates a different user experience. The truth is that bikes often use a combination of sensors, so a bike that relies primarily on a torque sensor may also have a cadence sensor and a speed sensor for smoother and more consistent power delivery. The Carbon Joy seems to rely primarily on a torque sensor in eco, tour, and boost modes, which helps it feel a lot like an analog bike, but I noticed that it seems to be a bit more cadence-based in the highest power level turbo mode. This makes pedaling remarkably easy by giving you a lot of steady power with less reliance on how hard you're working, and I think that's a really smart decision on a bike that's able to haul some extra weight on the cargo rack. As far as the throttle goes, I like that it wasn't too punchy with relatively gradual acceleration. I think this helps the bike feel more approachable to those who haven't been on one in a while, although I do have some critique that I'll bring up later in the hill test section. Overall though, this bike did a great job in this test, so it gets another solid 2 thumbs up. The goal of our range test is to see how far a bike can go on a single charge, and we do 2 separate tests where we ride until the battery runs out of juice. With the Carbon Joy, we did one test in boost mode to find its minimum range and another in eco mode to get its maximum, and our testers went 24.6 and 35.7 miles respectively. Now, this bike's 529 watt-hour battery is on the small side when compared to similar bikes we've tested, so it wasn't a shock that our test results were below average when compared to similar models we've tested. Utility bikes tend to go about 33 and 59 miles in our tests, with batteries that average 730 watt-hours, making the Carbon Joy about 8.5 miles below average in boost and 23.5 miles below average in eco. On paper, those results might not look so good, but this bike did prove to be much more efficient than we expected based on its motor and battery specs. We estimated that our turbo mode test would only give us about 18 miles with a little over an hour of ride time, but our testers were able to ride an additional 20 minutes and 6 miles, which is about a 34% increase over what we anticipated. The Carbon Joy did fairly well for its specs, but we do recommend that Urtopia revises their advertised estimate of up to 70 miles of range, at least in this pre-launch period. Do also keep in mind that we did our testing on the bike in class 2 modes without any cargo on the rack, so you should expect fewer miles if you're riding faster or carrying extra weight. The bike does come with a 4 amp fast charger though, so if you do run out of juice, it should only take a little over 3.5 hours to recharge. As you might guess, we use our hill test to find out how well a bike can climb. We do our testing on a steep paved path called Hellhole Trail that has a 12% average grade over 1/3 of a mile. Our test rider Justin took the Carbon Joy up the path twice, once with its throttle and again with its pedal assist system set to turbo mode. Let's see what happened and we can talk about the results once we get back here.
Okay, we are out on a bike that I'm very intrigued to see how it does. It's the Urtopia Carbon Joy, kind of a short tail carbon fiber bike that, again, lighter than a lot of the short tail utility bikes. So we'll see what that lightness does. So far, not feeling super peppy, about 6.5. Again, I'm just doing the throttle only test here. 5.5, 5.4. Oh, come on, let's see if it makes it. 4.1, 3.1. Okay, it's gonna have to reach real deep. Real deep, but I don't want to speak too soon. 2.8, it's kind of holding it. 2.9. If it can keep that really slow low end torque going. 2.5. Oh, come on. It's easy to balance on. 1.8. I don't think so. 1.4. I'm gonna give it everything I can. 1.5. 1.4. Get to the gate. 1.3. No, I'm gonna call it. I think I'm gonna burn out the motor. Anyway, so I made it to the gate up here on throttle. We will turn around and see how it does on pedal. Okay, we're back out now on the Urtopia Carbon Joy, now doing the pedal test. Did not make it up on the throttle, so I'm not expecting it to, like, you know, completely just zip up here. So far, again, I'm in turbo. We're about 10 miles an hour, 6th gear. I'm gonna shift down to 5th, down to 4th. 9.4, 9.1. Not pedaling too hard, but I am pedaling a little bit more than I do on some other short tail cargos. So it's a very natural feeling. Motor is incredibly quiet. I can hear it, but not very much. So I'll let you listen here and do this next punchy section. Shift down to 3rd and 2nd gear. I'll speed up and see if you hear the motor more. Yeah, so even at higher cadences, the motor is very quiet. Very nice feel, handling climbing. Not crazy fast or powerful, but you know, if you shift down to 2nd gear, 3rd gear, just kind of turn the pedals, you'll be able to make it up. We'll see what the time is. I don't think it's gonna be like bad by any means. Won't be at the top of the category, but it feels smooth. So I did like it, even though it wasn't super fast. It climbed it nicely.
All right, so of course the Carbon Joy wasn't able to complete the throttle portion of the test, but it did a decent job in the pedal test. Justin finished that climb in 1 minute and 41 seconds. Now, that is the slowest time we've recorded for a utility style e-bike. The category averages 1 minute and 18 seconds for the pedal portion of the test, but considering that other types of bikes have taken upwards of 2.5 minutes to finish that climb, the Carbon Joy didn't do too bad in the grand scheme. As Justin mentioned, it definitely leans into the more natural feeling side of things, and that's most apparent when we look at the motor's torque rating. The motor peaks at 750 watts with just 33 newton meters of torque, which is one of the lowest torque ratings we've seen on an e-bike, period. Now, I did some separate testing at our secondary location called Pilot Hill, which is a bit less intense than Hellhole, but still a big enough hill that most cyclists walk up. Pedaling was definitely an active experience that gave me a bit of a workout, but the motor was definitely helpful in helping me reach the top. The throttle was powerful enough to make it up the climb there, even if it wasn't the fastest. So I think if you have small to average sized hills where you ride, you'll probably be okay. Considering that Urtopia seems to be gearing their marketing towards seniors and those newer to e-bikes, we encourage the company to choose a motor with a higher torque rating in the future, which would hopefully give riders who live in hilly areas an easier pedaling experience and a more capable throttle. Otherwise, if you enjoy active pedaling or you live in a flatter area, I think the current setup should work just fine. We've covered a lot of performance data for the Carbon Joy, but we haven't spent a ton of time talking about how it feels to ride, and that's what this ride quality section is all about. Let's go back out to the bike paths and talk about some basic elements of the ride, including sizing, comfort, motor engagement, and a few other things, but then we'll dive in a little bit deeper once we get back here. All right, let's talk about ride quality on the Carbon Joy. So interesting bike here, sort of a lightweight utility style e-bike. There's a single frame size that is intended for riders from 5 foot up to 6'3". The riding position here is pretty upright, although that is adjustable. You get about a little under 10 inches of adjustment in your saddle height, and then there's an adjustable stem that gives you 60 degrees of rotation to change your handlebar height and your reach. So I'm 5'11", so near the top end of the recommended height range there, and I have decent leg extension, although I don't have the saddle set as high as I normally would, mainly because the stem here is pretty well maxed out, and the handlebars honestly still feel a bit low, so I'm kind of splitting the difference here in terms of comfort based on leg extension and handlebar height. Just kind of going for sort of a happy middle ground, and overall I'd say the bike is comfortable. I think its handling, as we've talked about, is definitely one of the biggest highlights. But let's see. We also have a suspension fork up front that gives you 50 millimeters of travel. Now, the one on our test bike here, our test bike is a pre-production model, so it's a little bit stiff, but it is doing, making a difference, doing its job. And the production model should have a softer fork, at least according to our contact at Urtopia. The tires do help out a bit with cushioning as well, so those are 20x3, sort of a mid-fat size, but they help to make this bike super maneuverable, and they have sort of a checkerboard knobby tread pattern that isn't super chunky for off-roading, but it does give you some flexibility to hit gravel or dirt roads, something like that, and it feels very good on paved surfaces as well. And then we also have a 500 watt rear hub motor with a torque sensor. As we've talked about, that is super sensitive, really nice and responsive, feels a lot like a regular bike, and just with 4 levels of power, just gives you a lot of optionality in terms of how the ride feels and how easy it is. But that covers the basics. Let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio and talk a little bit more.
I wasn't quite sure what to expect when I hopped on this bike for the first time, but the super fun handling and the overall simplicity I mentioned at the beginning of this review really stood out as huge parts of what this bike is like to ride. I think Urtopia really nailed the motor engagement and did a great job of not overloading the bike with too many features and buttons, but there were a few other areas with room for improvement. I briefly talked about the handlebar height in the video clip, which felt low even with the stem at its highest point of rotation, and that leads me to say that the recommended height range might be a bit hopeful. I think taller riders around the 6 foot mark might find the sizing a bit awkward, so I think the Carbon Joy is going to be best for those of shorter to average height. With the handlebar shape and the stiffness of the suspension fork set to be different than they were on our pre-production model, it's hard to comment on those aspects, but I do think there's a good chance the bike will be more comfortable overall, and I think the change in handlebars in particular will result in a unique fusion between a utility bike and a cruiser. Visually, the bike's display looks great, and I liked how easy it was to adjust the angle of the screen for visibility. I would have preferred studded pedals to the plastic pedals with grip tape that came with the bike, but I did like the saddle and grips. Overall, I think this bike stands out with its maneuverability, its responsiveness, and the fact that it's easy to use, so if those things are important to you, I think you'll like what the Carbon Joy has to offer. My opinion of the Carbon Joy and the general consensus around the office here at Electric Bike Report is that this bike is solid, it's fun, and it sets a pretty high bar for Urtopia, considering that it's the first of the company's bikes that we've tested. Obviously, it's not as overtly high-tech as the ChatGPT integrated bike, but it's not trying to be, and I think it'll have a lot of appeal for folks looking for something relatively simple and straightforward to use. Looking back at our test sections, the bike had mixed results, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. It had great programming with well-balanced and approachable power levels. It did an excellent job in our brake test. It fell a bit behind in terms of range, but that wasn't unexpected considering its battery size. And while its hill test results showed that its motor isn't as powerful as some other models out there, it still does a great job of helping you as long as you don't mind active pedaling. I do think the motor could do with a bit more torque on the next version of the bike, but as it is, I think the Carbon Joy will be best suited for riders of shorter to medium height who want a bike with approachable power levels and a highly responsive feel. Whether that means commuting to work or school, running some errands, or just cruising around the park, this bike is pretty versatile. I had a really great time testing it, and I'm looking forward to trying out more products from Urtopia in the future. If you want to take a closer look at the Carbon Joy, you can check out the links to our written review and the bike's webpage down in the video description. And again, if you decide to make a purchase, please help to support our work by using that affiliate link. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to check out our other reviews and share our content with your friends, and let us know what you think about the Carbon Joy in the comments section. But I hope you found this review helpful. Thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Urtopia Carbon Joy.